Hello folks, and welcome back to Mod of the Month, where we showcase some of the best builds completed over the last month over in the BitTech forums. Corsair has upped the ante and are providing a host of Hydro X themed goodies, with first place netting a choice of an XC9 or XC7 RGB CPU block, a choice of GPU block from their range, an XD5 RGB pump reservoir combo, and a Commander Pro. Second place gets a choice of CPU block and GPU block, and third gets a choice of CPU block. As ever, if you want to be in with a chance of taking part and netting some pretty awesome Corsair goodies, all you need to do is have a completed project log posted over on the BitTech forums. Enjoy the builds.
First up, congratulations to the last Mod of the Month winner, which was Yaiba Kusanagi by PC Custom. The strong theme and stellar handwork proved a hit with the voters, landing it a comfortable top spot. Now let's go have a look and see who's been nominated for this month. Kicking things off, we have SF1S by Felipe Samamba. This was another build that was completed for the 2020 Cooler Master World Series, and as such, Felipe opted to use an SL600M chassis as the basis for the mod. The theme here was sci-fi, and Felipe wanted to target a very sleek and clean aesthetic, but also one that had many of the nods to classic science fiction styles. That meant stripping down the case and reconstructing a whole new interior from the ground up out of acrylic and aluminium. To bring the theme into the components, he cut a motherboard shroud out of aluminium, which was then bent into shape, sanded, and then painted in a metal flake silver. This cover wraps around both the motherboard and the water block itself. Along the base, he used bulkhead fittings to position the tubing vertically. These then sit in front of an acrylic sandwich structure that not only holds the reservoir, but also lights up internally. The exterior was painted to match, and an Arduino-based control system added to the front panel that helps carry forward the spaceship aesthetic. Final details include full interior lighting elements and the moulded window frame. Now Defied is a bit of a modding OG over on the BitTech forums, with a host of spectacular projects under his belt. As such, when he spends a whole year on a single build, you know you're in for something rather special. Now Hypercase DM01 builds on the signature aesthetic that Defiant has built up over the years. The bulk of the structure is formed from hand-cut acrylic panels, which are layered and bonded together to form complex angular shapes. Now in contrast to his usual style though, he opted to fill, prime and paint the panels instead in a gunmetal finish. Now being an air-cooled PC, care was taken to ensure that there would be ample airflow available. This meant working large filtered vents into the top, front and side panels, with the front boasting a layered acrylic structure that allows plenty of air to pass through. Finer details include the custom wiring that's neatly wrapped through black conduit, multi-layered panels on the motherboard tray and integrated RGB lighting. Not content with just having a chassis though, he also crafted a set of speaker enclosures from thick acrylic that matched the aesthetic of the case. The result is a beautifully neat setup with a very bold appearance. There's a chance you may have actually already seen Cryo PC by Datalab, as his final build video went up a couple weeks ago on his own channel, and has been doing really rather well indeed, and for good reason. Cryo PC is a fantastic testament as to the versatility of 3D printing, as a huge portion of the scratch-built chassis was indeed printed. Now opting to go for a grungy sci-fi theme, David meticulously planned out the structure so that it could be efficiently divided and printed. The pieces were then assembled, sanded, filled and primed, and then finally painted. Now since brand new components don't really fit in well with a grunge theme, David also set to work weathering and aging them in a similar manner to the chassis. This was further carried through to the water cooling parts such as the reservoir and the radiator, both of which sit outside the main chassis and connect with tubes to the centerpiece. Now huge care was taken to bring all the parts of this build into a cohesive package, and it was also great to see other custom elements included, such as his first attempt at a milled flat reservoir. With the whole setup mounted on the wall, it really does give off a vibe of being an abandoned cryotube. Mission accomplished. As a project, Attilia seems to be much simpler than it really is. The key feature of this build is the way in which it's formed, namely a single sheet of thick aluminium which was then bent into shape, much in the way that the Yule Beast Atlas chassis is, only significantly scaled down. After being cut and bent, the chassis was then Cerakoted black, which is a tricky finish for large pieces as it's quite difficult to get an even coating. However, it does also result in a very durable layer. Now to soften the look, 2 plywood accent panels were then laser cut, engraved, and then finally stained. These were then placed over the radiator mounting points on the outside. Now the layout of the chassis allows for a very straightforward loop to be installed with two 240mm radiators. This was kept all black with only white lighting so as not to distract from the subdued appearance of the whole system. Also a mod built for the 2020 Cooler Master World series, as you would expect, the Dark Knight is indeed themed around Batman. The idea was that Todd wanted to construct a rig that wouldn't look out of place in the Batcave itself. So to that extent, he began by crafting the main chassis components from laser cut acrylic and a selection of 3D printed brackets. Through carefully layering the sheets of acrylic over one another, Todd was able to add texture to the surfaces as well as various motifs. Turning his attention to the water cooling loop, Todd went about constructing a custom panel reservoir from mirrored acrylic. Now by placing LEDs on the side and engraving the surface panels, he was able to achieve a really interesting lighting effect across the front, which ties in nicely with the other white light spread around the build. The loop itself was then finished up with chrome tubing, which adds a lot of contrast to the interior. Further details around the case include bat insignias constructed from mirror acrylic, as well as a 3D printed partial bat suit on the rear of the case. Now, born from Dan's desire to reduce the footprint of his CNC control server, Atacs, or ATAACS, whichever is correct, is a very neat little package indeed. After drawing up the whole structure in CAD, Dan then set to work machining each of the panels from thick aluminium on his home CNC mill setup. That meant drilling holes. An awful lot of holes, over 6,000 holes to be exact. Now rather than use slots or similar methods for airflow, Dan chose to use a huge matrix of the tiny holes arranged in an offset pattern. Now this is incredibly time consuming to do. It does, however, provide a very clean appearance to all the panels. Obviously ITX rigs are often about ruthless efficiency, so in order to reduce the size of the rig, Dan switched to a sandwich layout, placing the Quadro GPU behind the motherboard inside of a dedicated compartment. Now this was then connected via a PCIe 4 riser cable that he built into the motherboard tray to keep things neat. Further details include the inset acrylic window on the side panel, RGB lighting, a set of turned case feet, and a power supply extension cord that runs from the unit to the back panel. Remember folks, if you'd like to be in with a chance of taking part and potentially winning some Corsair Hydro X gear, you just need to have a completed project log over on the BitTech forums. Be warned though, we do like to see how the projects grow, so get in early and show us the progress. Of course, it also goes without saying that if you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, as this is the home of PC modding on YouTube. We're going to have plenty more project logs, part reviews and tutorials on the way, and you really don't want to miss out. You can also find us over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter and builds.gg. Our Discord server is also linked below and is the best place to stay up to date with all the ongoing projects and other tidbits. Also, if you'd like to support the channel, make sure to have a look through our merchandise store, again linked in the description. We've got some pretty sweet shirts, hoodies and mugs up already, and we'll be adding more in the future, so be sure to check back regularly. Take care folks, and I'll catch you next time.